Hi everyone, welcome to Colouring with Kay and thank you for joining me today. So in this video I am going to try to describe my process for colouring a page. I have been asked to do this video for by quite a few of you in the past, and you say, can I share how I decide on what supplies or mediums to use for a page, and what's sorry, voice going funny, decide what's my process for colouring a page, what's my thoughts behind actually doing a page. So I'm going to attempt to try to do that. So I haven't thoroughly planned this video because I just haven't got much time to do that, so I'm just gonna do the very best I can and hopefully it is of some use to you guys. So these are a few books on this side that I'm going to hope to colouring this month in November. If I don't get to them, I don't get to them, but I am actually trying to plan to colour in these books. So we've got the Africa postcards, the Kawaii Tarot colouring book by Lulu Mayo, Avery Mythographic by Joseph Kattenbang, and this Whimsical Houses Creative Haven by Angela Porter. So I'm going to put them to the side, and first of all, when I decide on a page, it takes me ages first of all to think of doing a particular page because I'm quite indecisive and I really have to be in the mood for a particular page as well. So once I've decided what page I'm going to do, then I sort of think background and main image, and then I think what I'm going to use for the background and then what I'm going to use for the main image. Now main image is going to usually be pencil for me because that's one of my favourite mediums. So when I think background, first of all, so we'll discuss background first. So with background, it depends, really the background I do depends on the type of book. So this book, for instance, Lulu Mayo's, apart from this one, this tarot book, the ones in this format do not like water. I mean, you can use water on them. Like when I say water, I mean like watercolour pencils. You can use a bit of watercolour paint because obviously you can see here that I've been using watercolour paint, metallic paints and things, and they're all right for small areas. But when I use watercolour pencils or Inktense pencils, these weird dots appear, and I don't like them dots. And the paper can pill quite easily as well for me. So I don't use watercolour pencils on paper like this. So when it comes to background, I usually choose things like pan pastels for the background, or in this case, I think I've used, let's have a look, I've used this Mica Magic. So this is by Craft Artist. It's basically a compact pigment mica for shading, colouring and drawing. It's basically what it is, and it's just like an eyeshadow palette really. And I used that, and in fact that's what I've used on this one here. So I think I used some greens, as you can see, and it is a little bit shimmery, not massively shimmery, but it is a little bit shimmery. So on paper like this, I would use something like that. So when I can't use watercolour pencils or water mediums for the background, I will use pan pastels or some sort of like gel crayons as well, because obviously they can be used. Now I could have used gel crayons on this as well because there's not that many little bits, little tiny teeny weeny bits to get into. So using a small applicator brush for these little areas wouldn't be too much of a problem. So I'd also probably consider using gel crayons. If it's a page with a lot of the background area is not like this here, this background area is absolutely fine because there's not very small areas to get into. So I could have used gel crayon here, but instead I decided to use base with an acrylic marker, and then use some Coliro metallic paint on top. So that's another option. Now that is an option if you've got paper that doesn't particularly like water like this, then you can base in, say, an acrylic marker. So let me just get it for you. I'll show you the acrylic marker that I use. I use these acrylic markers here. So I just based everything in the acrylic marker, and it looked quite horrendous. This was actually an idea from Wendy, from Wendy's Colouring. And then on top I used some of this, like, show you it, my Coliro paints, just that I think it was. So when you do that, because the acrylic paint forms like a layer on the paper, it doesn't really, you know, affect the paper at the back. It's sort of a coating that sort of protects the page because you've already put the acrylic marker down, so the watercolour sort of sits on top. But then another background like this, which is more you know, there's lots of little bits to get into, isn't there? Lots of little bits to get into. In that case, what did I use here? I can't even remember. I think I may have used, I just can't remember. I just cannot remember. I don't think I used an acrylic marker. Maybe I used acrylic paint. So I might have used acrylic paint, but I just cannot remember. And then on top, I used some watercolour glitter. So watercolour glitter, and again, it's the same thing, isn't it? Because the acrylic paint or the acrylic pen makes a layer on the page so that when you do apply anything with water in it, like glitter watercolour or just normal watercolour, usual watercolour, it's not gonna, you know, warp the paper. And this paper's quite straight, as you can see. Now, just going off backgrounds a little bit here, I knew that most of this is going to be pencil, apart from the ghosts, and so what I decided was I wanted the background to be sparkly, and then to add a sparkly background, if there's not much sparkle in the actual picture, then I add glitter watercolours. So when I say glitter watercolours, I usually mean things like this. This is the Art Spirits Rainbow Dust and Mirror Dust. Absolutely stunning. If you want a subtle effect of glitter, you can colour on top with pencil or alcohol markers or anything really, and then put, using a paintbrush of course, put the glitter watercolour on top, and this doesn't come off. It's, you know, set. Once it's dry, it's set. So basically that's that. So background, the type of supply I use for my background really does depend on the type of paper. So paper that don't really like watercolour, I try to use pan pastels, mica powders, gel crayons, acrylic paint or acrylic marker. Obviously my choice for acrylic, I'd go for acrylic marker if there was more small bits to get into. I think this one here was black acrylic paint. And then I put some, forgotten the name of this actually, what is it? It is Deco Art. Must have it in here somewhere, but yes, this is what it is. It's Deco Art Enchanted Shimmer. So put a bit of that on top. So it's got black acrylic paint and then the Deco Art Enchanted Shimmer, so that it's got this sort of really nice sort of a shimmer. Not really a glitter, but more of a shimmer, I'd say. Glitter, I'd say, is more obvious, more sparkly. So yeah, that's what I do. I could even use pencil. Sometimes I use pencil for background. Like obviously this is Amazon printed paper. I'm not going to use a watercolour background on here. I'm not going to use Neocolor, Inktense, Albert Dürer watercolour, any of that sort of stuff, because the paper just can't handle it. So I think what I used for this one was alcohol markers, if it's single-sided. Of course, Lulu Mayo's is not single-sided, so alcohol marker background is out of the question for me, because that means sacrificing one of the pages. In a book like this, I would use alcohol marker, but I just don't like to leave it just with alcohol marker because it's just, there's no shading and it looks quite flat. So then what I did on this is I used some crayon. So let me just show you the crayon. So these were the crayons I used. These are the, I mean, you could use wax crayons. They're just a little bit less pigmented than these. So these are the Uni Posca pastels. I think I've got a video on this to show how I did this. So I used, I've only got a few, I haven't got a whole set or anything, but I used some of these Uni Posca crayons or pastels, and I just made vertical lines and did shading. And then what I did then was I blended it a little bit with, if I can find it now, yeah, whoops, I blended it with Zest It, but the Zest It is in the Derwent blender pen, so you could use a Derwent blender pen, but I sort of refill these up with Zest It fluid, and then I blended it so that it gives it a softer look, and I quite like it. That's how I did the ground as well that the dog is sitting on, and then I added some oil pastel on the border, which I think I shouldn't have added, but anyway, sometimes that happens. So yeah, that was just some Sennelier oil pastel on the border. So yeah, in a book like this, have I done any other ones? I don't think I have in that one. And then in another Amazon printed book, which is another R.J. Hampson book, of course, if the space is smaller like this, because this is quite a detailed page that you can see, that I just did in pencil and used pencil shading. But if it's a background where I have quite a big background like this one, then what I did, and if I really want to use watercolour, then there's only one way for me. If I want to use water mediums and I want to use a broader range of mediums, because I think this has got, I think there's a video on this as well somewhere on my channel. If I want to use like lots of watercolour, pretty much the whole page, and it's Amazon printed paper, then what's happened with this is that I've actually used gesso on this. So I've pre-coated the page with 2 layers of gesso. Gesso is rather rough. Now I used gesso for this one because I knew that I wanted to use my Faber-Castell Gelatos and Distress crayons, and they work better, or I find they work better anyway, on gesso than on satin glazing fluid. So I gessoed this, but you can also satin glaze things if you want to use watercolour. And then you can also use water-based markers because it gives you such an intense colour once you've pre-prepared your pages. So there's always that option as well. And then I used a stencil on top as well. So yeah, that's that one. And then if it's a really detailed page, then, I mean, this was an Inktense background, but I'm not particularly pleased with it because there's nothing on the other side really, but it didn't come out as well as I wanted it to. On pages like this, I do use alcohol markers or things like that. So actually discussing individual pages, let's look at this example here. Once I've got my background done, if it is one like this, for example, let me show you, sorry, still with backgrounds here, good paper like this, I will use watercolours, like my metallic watercolour here, and then I will also use, this is good paper, so what else have I used on here? Sometimes I do still use pencil. I've used acrylic black paint. This one's actually pencil. Because there's so many little intricate bits, I just thought it's straightforward doing it in pencil, so I just did pencil. So once I've done my background, instead of going on so much, let me just explain. Should we choose this page here? So in this book, It's highly detailed. I know that majority in a book like this where there's such small details, I know that I'm going to use a lot of pencil, a lot of fine liner, a lot of gel pen, because the small details are very appropriate to use, like gel pens and fine liners. It's just, you're not in a small area, you're not going to be able to shade much. And then, yeah, I know that those are the mediums I'll use, and you can see that I've used some glossy accents on these domes because they would generally be shiny. When I have clouds, I like to do either the clouds realistic, but most of the time I don't. I do them multicoloured. So that's another thing I like to use my Holbein pastel shaded pencils. And then I also like to use the Uniball sparkling silver to go around the clouds and give them a silver lining. With any page I do, I always like to include some sort of metallic paints and gel pens. So any little detailings, I sort of do that, you know. And then also I like to use my glaze pens in places. So like leaves, I often, a few little leaf details, I'll put my Jelly Roll glaze. This one was a pencil background and it absolutely took ages, and the reason why I chose a pencil background for this was because I don't think I could achieve this effect with most of my other mediums. I wanted a really dark areas, and I wanted the blending to be quite seamless, and I really could only get that with pencil, so that's why I decided to do a pencil background here. I knew with all the little details here that they were going to be in gel pen because they stand out and they make your page pop. And then the other thing I like to add just to bring out some of the details is, especially for crystals and gems, are my iridescent opal colours, the Gansai Tambia ones, which are a reasonable price. They're really good for adding iridescence to aspects, you know, putting colour on top of pencil. I think this might have been alcohol marker at the back as well. Again, metallic stuff, I will usually use my metallic paints. And pipes and things, metallic paints. This was a very big area, so pan pastels, and these clouds here, I wanted them to look very out of this world, you know, like a fantasy thing, so therefore I chose colours such as pink and orange, and I also thought the pink and the peach and the yellowy orange would go very well against the blue. So I do consider mediums I can use for my backgrounds in terms of what the paper can handle. I do consider the detail level of the page. If it's more detailed, I will use mediums that are going to be easier to use if it's more detailed. So I will just use pencil, for example, for the background. I will use fine liners for the details and gel pens for the details. So yeah, here you can see these trees were alcohol marker, and then I think I might have shaded with pencil on top. Let's look at some other books. Oh, I'm talking too much, aren't I? I think. Now, I think I've gone through this. Let's look at pages I am going to colour, possibly colour, and how I would do them. So, the first one, a few minutes discussing that. So, I'm hoping to colour in these, so I'm going to discuss my ideas of how I might be approaching it. So this Mine Research Africa postcard, I'll try to do this, a little bit of this on camera if I can in one of my videos. If not, then you'll see it in my completed pages. But this one of the paper's thicker, so I'm thinking background, actual watercolour, right? So not pencil, but actual liquid watercolours I think I'll use. And then Inktense for the tree, pretty much, just because it's quicker and also the paper can handle it. Thinking all these little bits here the smaller little areas like these little circles, the start, that's all going to be in paints, metallic paints or metallic gel pens or glitter gel pens. I can see these little flower bits being in glitter gel pen as well. I'd probably do that in pencil. I'd probably do my bird in pencil, but the little details I would bring out with gel pen, either glitter gel pen or metallic gel pen. So that's my ideas for that. Kawaii Taro, now this one can take watercolour. You can see here that I've actually used ink tints in the background, and I think for the octopus as well. I'm not sure which page I actually want to do, but I am going to use, because the paper can handle it, some watercolour. So maybe that one's not a good one to discuss, but maybe this one, because I have actually picked a page which I think I'm set on doing. I mean, this example here, I used Graphitint water, I think it was watercolour, was it watercolour? I can't even remember now. It might, yeah, it must have been Graphitint watercolour pencils, because I wanted the background to be quite dark, and I knew I was going to use metallic paint and pencil for my birds, because I wanted these little detail bits to be metallic paint. And I knew that with crystals, I generally use a rainbow of pastel shades. And then go over the black lines with white or silver gel pen, and then I go over it using some glossy accents or some sort of glaze just to make the crystals shiny. So yeah, and I was always going to use some of these greeny blue, purpley blue and orangey red colours for my hummingbirds. Anyway, the page that I'm thinking of here is this. Now with this, I'm thinking similar to, possibly right now, I mean it might be different because, you know, I could change my mind. I am thinking I want a darker, quite a dark background. Now this might be a dark background like this, Graphitint one, or I might just do just a black acrylic paint with some sparkly glitter paint on top, and then these leaves look like autumn leaves falling, so they will be autumnal colours in pencil. Most of this will be pencil. My aim is to make the inside of this quite, you know, cosy looking, and therefore I'm going to use warm colours for this. Pencils, how do I decide the pencils? Well, I use a mixture, so you know, I will use possibly Polly's, Arteza, Black Widow, whatever works well on the paper, I will use them, but I generally use a mixture. The bird, I want it to be cool looking because these are an autumnal page, so it'll be, again, purples, violets, blues, possibly some greens. This steam type thing that's coming out, for me, in my mind, I feel like having a little bit of pastel shaded colours on the edges and then greys, and then going over it maybe with I don't know, possibly glossy accent. I'm not 100% sure about that, going over it with glossy accents, but yeah, some rainbow shades of my pastel shaded pencils and a bit of grey, and yeah, that's it. I can't really think of anything else, I don't think. Obviously there has to be some metallic paint on here, and the metallic paint will probably be on the actual edges of this teapot. I think it's a teapot, yeah, so some bits there, and I see it being a shiny blue teapot, so yes, but the inside of this will have to be, I want to make sure that I'm using warmer colours for that. Yeah, something like that. It's very difficult to think, you know, on the spot, but yeah, those will be, the metallic bits will be probably on there, on the teapot bit, and then on the detailing, and there'll probably be glossy accent possibly on here over the pencil work. think so. Anyway, and then this one, I'm hoping to colour in whimsical houses, but I'm not sure I'm going to get to it. I have not chosen a page, but as you can see, these are exceptionally detailed pages. So with this, I envisage using quite a lot of pencil and fine liner. Like I said, I haven't chosen a page. Now, if it's a big enough background, I might use alcohol marker, and then I might use a little bit of watercolour pencils on top of the alcohol marker. Now, I know this is quite thin paper, but if I use alcohol marker first, it might take a little bit of watercolour on top. And the rest, most of this will be pencil. Larger areas will be pencil, and then I'll use, in the smaller areas, it'll be fine liner and gel pen. Yeah, that's it. Now, I know I've probably missed bits out in this video, and I've probably repeated quite a lot of things, but I hope you've got a little bit of an understanding of how I approach a page and my process for colouring a page. So I hope you found it a little bit useful, at least. So until next time, guys, take care, happy colouring, bye.